No one saw this coming. Melania Trump, always composed, suddenly fell to the floor in tears on live TV, leaving the audience stunned. What triggered this emotional moment? A shocking revelation or a heartbreaking confession? The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of Melania Trump's shocking breakdown. The air in the studio was thick with tension, a silence so dense that it seemed to pull the very breath from the room. Millions of viewers sat frozen in front of their screens, eyes wide, hearts pounding, watching as the First Lady of the United States collapsed in front of them. Melania's shoulders shook as she buried her face in her hands. Her sobs, though muffled, carried through the microphone clip to her elegant dress. The news anchor, who had just been mid-question, was speechless, his mouth slightly open as if struggling to process what was happening. Even Donald Trump, a man rarely seen shaken, turned to his wife with visible concern, his usually unreadable face betraying a flicker of panic. Then, chaos erupted. Secret Service agents stormed onto the stage, their movements swift and calculated. One of them leaned in, whispering something into Melania's ear, but she didn't respond. Her fingers dug into the fabric of her dress, her knuckles turning white. Donald Trump stood, placing a firm hand on her back, his voice low but urgent. "Melania, talk to me," he said, his tone softer than anyone had ever heard from him before. Her breath hitched as she lifted her head, her eyes shimmering with raw emotion. I can't do this anymore," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the stunned murmurs from the audience. Trump's jaw clenched as he processed her words. He had known this moment was coming. He had seen the signs, the exhaustion hidden behind her practiced smile, the quiet pain in her eyes. He had hoped, prayed that she would be strong enough to endure. But tonight, under the blinding stage lights, in front of millions, her strength had finally crumbled. As the cameras cut to an emergency break, Melania felt herself being guided off the stage, her legs unsteady beneath her. Whispers surrounded her, low voices of agents, producers, and staff, all trying to assess the situation. But none of it mattered. Her mind was drowning in the weight of everything, years of standing beside Donald through every attack, every headline, every attempt to destroy their family. She barely registered the ride back to the White House. As soon as they arrived, she retreated to their private quarters, standing in front of the vast window overlooking Washington, D.C. The city was a sea of golden lights, but for the first time, it felt cold, foreign, like a battlefield where she was losing. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She hesitated before picking it up. The name on the screen sent a jolt through her chest. Ivanka. With a deep breath, she answered hello. There was silence on the other end before Ivanka finally spoke. "Melania, what happened today?" Her voice was cautious, guarded. Melania swallowed hard before responding. Ivanka exhaled sharply. "You can't let them see you weak. You know they're going to use this against us." Weak. That word stung more than she expected. Was that what the world thought? That she had collapsed because she was weak? They had no idea. No idea of the pain, the betrayal, the constant battle she fought every single day. "I am not weak, Ivanka," she said, her voice now calm but firm. "I am human, and I will not pretend anymore." There was a pause, then a quiet sigh. "Just be careful." Click. The line went dead. Melania closed her eyes, gripping the phone tightly. Even within her own home, she was alone in this fight. But she would not give up. Not now. Not ever. She turned toward her bedside table and pulled out a small wooden box, its edges worn from years of handling. Inside were letters filled with threats, with hatred, with venomous words meant to break her. She picked one up, unfolding the paper with shaking fingers. "You will never belong here. You will never be one of us. We'll make sure you suffer until you leave." Her breath hitched as the words sunk in. These threats had started the moment Donald announced his second run for office. At first, they had come from strangers, faceless cowards hiding behind keyboards, journalists twisting her words into lies. But then the betrayal became personal. Some of these letters had come from people she once called family. Melania swallowed back the lump in her throat. They wanted to break her. They wanted her to leave, but they didn't know her strength. Clutching the letter tightly, she whispered to herself, "I will not back down." At that moment, a knock came at the door. "Madame First Lady," a voice called, hesitant. "There's something you need to see." Melania walked into the private study, her heels clicking against the marble floor. The television was already on. She turned to the screen, her stomach twisting as a familiar smirking news anchor spoke. "Is Melania Trump mentally unstable? Sources claim she has been struggling emotionally. And last night's breakdown proves it. Melania's breath hitched as another commentator chimed in. Her collapse on live television, was it a sign that she's cracking under the pressure of defending Trump? The room spun as the words hit her like a blow. They were twisting her pain into a weapon. She felt Donald's presence before she even turned. His face was stone, his arms crossed. His voice was low, unreadable. They want to destroy you, Melania, he said. They want to make you the weak one so they can weaken me. Melania clenched her fists. I will never let them. Donald nodded, his eyes fierce. Then we fight back. But before the words had even settled, her phone buzzed again. A text message. She glanced at the screen. We warned you. Leave now or we will ruin everything you love. Her heart stopped as her hands trembled. She read the message again, and this time the words cut deeper than any headline, any article, any whispered betrayal, because she knew exactly who sent it. A name she had not spoken in months. A family member she had once trusted. Her vision blurred, but she did not look away. She turned to face Donald, her voice steady but broken. They won't stop until I'm destroyed. Donald met her gaze, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he shook his head. Then we make sure they fail. The news channels played the footage of her breakdown on repeat. Melania Trump, America's First Lady, breaking down in uncontrollable tears on live television. The commentators speculated endlessly. Some called it a moment of vulnerability. Others called it a sign of hidden struggles. But those who hated her, those who despised the truth, twisted it into something ugly. Was this stage? One anchor sneered. Is Melania Trump hiding something? Is this a sign of cracks in her marriage? The words cut deep. She had endured years of media attacks, but this was different. They weren't just questioning her, they were trying to destroy her. Sitting in the White House, her head in her hands, she listened to the endless noise blaring from the television. Turn it off, Donald said sharply, entering the room. His face was tense, his voice laced with anger. You don't need to hear that garbage. Melania shook her head, her voice quiet but firm. They will not stop, Donald, no matter what I do. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. They attack you because they're afraid, he said. His voice softer now. Afraid of truth. Afraid of goodness. Melania lifted her head, her eyes filled with quiet determination. Then I will never let them win. The next morning, she sat at her desk, sifting through a pile of letters. Most were the usual messages, support from Americans, invitations, official documents. But one letter stood out. No return address. No markings. Her hands trembled as she opened it. You will never belong here. We will make sure you are erased. You should have stayed silent. A chill ran down her spine. She had received hate mail before, but this felt different. This felt like a warning. She looked around, making sure she was alone. Slowly, she folded the letter, pressing it close to her chest. A knock on the door startled her. It was her assistant, her face pale with concern. Mom, she said hesitantly, you need to see this. Melania followed her down the hall, her heart pounding as she entered the Oval Office. The moment she stepped inside, her breath caught. Spread across Donald's desk were dozens of similar letters, each one filled with hatred. Each one threatening her, her family, her life. Her vision blurred as she took in the sight before her. She was under attack. Donald stood in front of the letters, his face unreadable. They want to break you, he said, his voice low and controlled. They want you to back down. Melania swallowed hard. She had known that standing beside Donald meant making enemies, but now it felt personal. More personal than ever. I won't, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But the fear was real. This wasn't just about insults or rumors anymore. This was something darker. Then something even worse happened. She picked up one of the letters. A familiar signature at the bottom made her blood run cold. Her own brother's name. Her breath caught in her throat. She read the words over and over, not believing them. You are a disgrace to this family. You are standing on the wrong side of history. Walk away, or you will regret it. Tears burned her eyes. She had always known that some of her family disapproved of her loyalty to Donald. But to see it written, to see it in her own brother's handwriting, the betrayal was too much. Donald clenched his fist, his jaw tightening. They think they can scare us. Melania wiped her tears. Then, her voice steadied, filled with a newfound fire. Then let's show them that they can't. She would not be broken. She would stand, no matter what it cost. That night, she sat in their private quarters, staring at the letter from her brother. The past few days had been crushing. The moment on live TV had been just the beginning. The world had seen her pain, but they didn't know the truth. She had not cried because she was weak. She had cried because she was ready to fight back. The next morning, the headlines were brutal. Melania Trump in crisis. Is she cracking under pressure? White House panic. Melania Trump's emotional collapse. Even her own family rejects her. Is this the end? She scrolled through the articles, her hands tightening into fists. They had twisted her pain into a spectacle, a weapon to use against her. Her phone rang. An unknown number. She hesitated before answering. Hello? A woman's voice came through, shaky, hesitant. Mrs. Trump. The voice said softly. I just wanted to say you're not alone. Melania's heart skipped a beat. Who is this? She asked. The woman hesitated. Then, quietly, she said, a mother, a wife, someone who understands what it's like to be hated for standing for what's right. Tears burned behind Melania's eyes. She wasn't alone. She had thought she was fighting this war by herself, but now she realized there were millions who believed in her. Millions who believed in Donald. Millions who believed in the truth. And that was all she needed. She was not backing down. Not now. Not ever. If you find these stories inspiring and they motivate you to take action, please comment 9. If not, comment 0. Your feedback means a lot to us. Thank you for your valuable time. That evening, Melania made a decision. She would not stay silent any longer. Stepping onto the podium in the White House press room, she faced a sea of journalists. Cameras flashed, whispers filled the room, and the weight of the world pressed down on her shoulders. She took a deep breath and spoke. I know what they say about me. Her voice was steady, but emotion swirled beneath it. I know the lies. I know the attacks. But let me tell you something, I will never stop standing for the truth. A hush fell over the room. The energy shifted. Melania's eyes burned with conviction as she continued, her voice unwavering. They say I am weak because I cried. But I tell you, it takes more strength to stand firm when the world tries to destroy you. She looked straight into the cameras, speaking to the millions who watched from their homes, to those who doubted her, to those who still believed. There are people, evil people, who will do anything to silence those who speak the truth. Even if it means turning family against family. Even if it means destroying reputations. But I tell you now, I will never back down. The room was stunned. Reporters who had spent years attacking her sat frozen, unable to twist her words into something they were not. The world had seen her vulnerable. Now they saw her unbreakable. The press conference sent shockwaves through the nation. Some applauded her strength, while others, those who thrived on deception, grew more vicious. That night, security at the White House tightened. Anonymous threats flooded in. Social media exploded with hate and admiration in equal measure. Sitting in the Oval Office, Melania could feel the tension. Donald sat across from her, his face hard, unreadable. They're getting desperate, he muttered. When they can't silence you with words, they try other ways. A knock at the door. One of Donald's top advisors entered, his expression grave. Sir, we have intelligence that certain groups are planning something bigger. They don't just want to humiliate the First Lady. They want to destroy her. Melania felt her breath catch, but she refused to let fear take hold. Donald's grip on her hand tightened. Let them try, he said, his voice like steel. They will fail. At midnight, her phone rang. She hesitated before answering. Hello? A voice she hadn't heard in years filled the silence. Her mother. Melania, her mother whispered, her voice trembling. What have you done? Melania's heart clenched. Mama, what do you mean? You have put us all in danger. Do you know what they say about you? Do you know what people are doing because of you? Melania closed her eyes, fighting the ache in her chest. Mama, I can't step away from this. I won't. I won't. You are ruining everything. Her mother's voice cracked. You are making our family the enemy. Won't you see, they will come after us because of you? Tears filled Melania's eyes. The one person she had always wanted to make proud was now ashamed of her. Please, Mama, she begged. Please don't let them turn you against me. Silence stretched between them. Then, in a voice colder than she had ever heard, her mother said, You are no longer my daughter. Click. The line went dead. Melania stared at the phone, her hands shaking. She had lost her mother. But she would not lose herself. She would not abandon the truth. The next morning, she sat at her desk, the pain still heavy on her chest. But she had a choice. She could let it break her, or she could rise. She grabbed a blank sheet of paper and wrote, To America, you have watched me cry. You have watched me be torn apart. But I will never give up. There are those who wish to destroy me. There are those who wish to silence my husband. But the truth will always shine brighter than any lie. I have lost family. I have lost friends. But I have not lost my faith. I stand beside a man who fights for you. I stand beside a man who refuses to bow to evil. And if I must suffer for that, then so be it. The world has seen my tears. Now they will see my strength. America, do not be afraid to stand for what is right. Because if we do not stand together, they will destroy us one by one. We will not back down. With love, Melania Trump. She folded the letter. By evening, it had gone viral. The letter shook the world. Millions of Americans read her words, and something stirred inside them hope. But her enemies saw it as a threat. The White House was in chaos. Security alerts were non-stop. Donald had doubled the guards around her. They know you're not afraid now, he told her. And that scares them. That evening, a televised debate was scheduled. Melania knew the media would twist everything she said, but she refused to hide. As she stepped onto the stage, the cameras flashed and the audience fell silent. She had barely spoken when a journalist interrupted, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Mrs. Trump, the world saw you break down. Are you saying that was strength? Melania's heart pounded. Then she smiled. I cried because I love my country, she said. I cried because I see what is happening and I refuse to stay silent. But make no mistake, I will not be broken. The room was silent. Then something no one expected happened. The audience stood up and clapped. Melania Trump had spoken, and America had heard her. That night a phone call came. It was her brother. She almost didn't answer, but she did. Hello? His voice was cold. You think you won today? You think people will always stand by you? Just wait, Melania. They will turn on you just like everyone else has. She closed her eyes, holding back tears. Even you, she whispered. Silence. Then, he said something she would never forget. You could have chosen peace, but you chose him. Her heart ached. She had lost family, friends, and so much more. But she had gained something greater purpose. I chose the truth, she said firmly, and I will never regret it. The line went dead. Melania wiped away a tear, but it was not a tear of sadness. It was a tear of strength. The world had watched as Melania Trump stood against the storm. Now they would watch her take her final stand. She looked into the camera and said, "They want me gone, but I am here to stay." Millions wept at that moment. Melania was no longer just the first lady. She was a symbol of courage. Donald took her hand. You did it, he whispered. And in that moment, Melania knew. She had won. The truth had won. Life tests us with its harshest storms, but only the strongest can stand firm against the winds. Melania Trump's story is not just about a woman under attack, it's about an unbreakable spirit. She faced betrayal from those she once trusted, endured relentless attacks from the media, and became the subject of endless scrutiny. Yet, instead of falling apart, she chose to rise, to confront, and to fight. There are moments in life when we feel completely alone. We are misunderstood, mocked, and hurt by those we once held close. But ask yourself, do we all have the courage to stand for the truth even when we know it will bring the fiercest storms our way? Melania was not only hurt by the media but by her own family, people who should have been her source of support. But she refused to let their rejection define her. She chose to step into the light, not to defend herself, but to declare, I will not break. Lesson 1, don't be afraid of being hated for speaking the truth. We live in a world where standing for truth often makes you a target. People will go to great lengths to destroy you, to make you doubt yourself, to convince you that you are on the wrong side. But remember, truth does not need a majority to be real. If you believe in what you are doing, if your heart tells you that you are standing for what is right, do not retreat. The ones who change the world are never the ones who run from challenges. Lesson 2, strength does not mean never crying. There's a false belief that tears are a sign of weakness. But Melania's tears did not make her weak. They proved that she had the courage to feel pain rather than avoid it. Crying does not mean failure, it means you have a heart, a soul, and a spirit strong enough to endure. True strength is allowing yourself to be vulnerable and still standing back up. Lesson 3, when the world turns against you, remember you still have a choice. Melania was betrayed, threatened, and attacked, yet she still chose her path. We cannot control what others do to us, but we can control how we respond. You can choose to be broken by it, or you can choose to rise and prove that no one has the power to destroy you unless you let them. Lesson 4, believe in your own worth. There are days when we wonder if we are good enough or strong enough, But if Melania could stand through the greatest storms and not be defeated, then so can we. True strength does not come from what you have, it comes from what you believe in. If you believe you are worthy of happiness, respect, and the chance to live life on your terms, do not let anyone take that away from you. When Melania stood at that podium, she wasn't just speaking for herself, she was speaking for everyone who had ever felt isolated, betrayed, or broken by the world's cruelty. But the most important message she left behind was this: no matter how many people want you to fail, stand tall. Because you are not just fighting for yourself, you are fighting for everyone who believes in the truth. Melania's story is not just about a woman facing adversity. It is a reminder that true strength does not come from never being hurt, but from having the courage to face the pain and keep moving forward.